I'm Mike Kelly from the Omaha Project Healing Waters Program. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's session. Tonight we have Gretchen Beatty from Boise, Idaho, who will be presenting a lime Trude fly, followed by a tough and easy version. So I'll hand it over to you, Gretchen.
Oh, okay. Well, just to get started, we're BT's on the fly, and as you said, Gretchen is on tonight, and she'll start with the recipe.
This is a lime Trude tough and easy. What I'm going to do first is tie the traditional lime Trude using a 1X dry fly hook. I'm a size 8 so that you can see it. I'm going to use black thread. I like to tie with moose body hair for the tail, so that's what I'm going to use. Fine copper wire, lime poly yarn for the abdomen, peacock herl, white calf tail, and then brown hackle. Then I'll follow up with the easy version, which is the white poly yarn for the wing. And I'll show you, as we go along, I'll show you some different techniques and ways to kind of deal with some of the problems.
You want the materials?
Yeah, let's go over here to the materials. We kind of talked about it already, but as you can see here, I've got my static guard because it's dry here and we fight static. I've got my herl, my thread, which I'll put over here by the vise, calf tail, moose body. Here's my hackle. And this, by the way, is what the poly yarn is. It's this Fentex. And that's what it looks like. And then when I comb it out and get all the knots out of it, this is also Fentex that I'm going to use for the body. So I think that probably, oh, and then of course the hooks, size 8 hooks. We've got some, this is copper wire, nice fine copper wire that I'll use. So I think we're ready to rock and roll.
And
see if I remember how to do this after 3 or 4 months. Okay, Al's already got a hook in here for me. So I'll start with the base wrap, and I find, oh yeah.
Just hold them up.
By the way, this is the first version. This is where we're going on the first fly. I want you to notice that wing, how it is tight against the body. And when I get to that, when I'm tying, I'll show you something and give you some options there. And then of course, this is the second one, which is the poly version. All right. One of the critical things on this one, and I tied a couple this afternoon just to be sure I could remember how to do it. And I crowded this area for my hackle. So you have to be sure to give yourself plenty of room. So I'm going to start at about the 1/3 point back from the eye and do my base wrap, holding the waist end up so that it sets the thread right down where I want it. Now, when I come back, I want you to notice I'm about 2 turns back from where I started. And the reason for that is when I tie my tail on, when I pull it up to trim it, it's going to push it forward. If I were to tie it clear back here, then I'd be pushed clear up there. I'd be in trouble already. So I'll get some moose body hair out of here. And I'm going to go over the waist bend. This is what it looks like before I clean it up. So I'll go back over here and get away from the camera to clean it. The way we traditionally clean our hair to get all the duff and stuff out of it is just to go
Raise it up just
back and forth like this. And it just works out the pieces.
Cuts down on static electricity.
You hold it clear out here on the end so that those shorter pieces go away. Then you need to kind of measure it And as you can see, I like to look, there's several different ways you can measure it. And one of my favorite ways is just to do a twist over. The twist over point here should be about equal to the outside diameter of the eye of the hook. So as you compare that, you can see that I probably have too much. So I'm going to get rid of a little bit of that and get a stacker. I always put my hair in butt first because the butts are what are even at this point, and push it back. Then I get the bottom part, put it together, and now I'll tap it to even it. Take it out, pointing the direction that you're going to put it on the hook. I think that's still just a little bit too much. I'm going to take about 4 or 5 more hairs out of there. I'm going to measure, and I want it the length of the shank. And the shank goes from the end where it starts going into the bend, and that is just right above the throat of the hook, to behind the eye, not out here in front of the eye, behind the eye. That's the shank. So I'll set it down in position. Now, when I'm tying a tail on, I like to, as you can see, I'm bringing it forward and down a little bit, and that way the torque of the thread will put it right in position. Now I want to show you something. One of the things we do is a holding wrap, which is a real tight wrap. And you might wonder why we do that. It's because if you don't, that's what happens. So I'm going to twist this back up. And I like to start real tight right here. I'm going to really ratchet down on it. Kind of messed it up a little bit playing with it. There we go. And that's a holding wrap. So now it's hopefully not going to twist. Played with it enough. So I probably should start over on that a little bit when you do that. Okay. Okay, tight. Then as I go to the back, when I'm doing it tight, as you can see, it's flared. I don't want this tail flared. So I'm going to loosen my wraps to holding wraps. So gently come back. And once you build up that buffer, it's not going to flare anymore. I must have really bent that one hair when I was playing with it. Keeps wanting to get in my way. All right, you
Bound
mess
and
with me,
determined to
that's
get in
what
your
happens
way,
to
yeah.
you. Mind you, that's what happens to you when you mess around. So, okay, I'm going to hold this up, and I kind of come back here, and I pull this at an angle so that when I cut it, I'm going to have kind of a beveled edge there. And that's my tail. Next, I want to put in my copper wire. So I'm going to take the copper, and I cut off a piece, and I will cut it way back here with my scissors so that I don't run the tips of it. And I tie it into the back side. So as I wrap, it's going to force that to the bottom of the hook. And that's where I like the wire to be. Next, I'm going to put on my poly abdomen. I've combed this out already because it comes really kind of knotted up, as you can see. And one of the things I've discovered is that a full clump of it is just a little heavy for me to get a real nice smooth body. So I take it and divide it, maybe in half down to a third, something like that. So I just have a smaller bunch of hair. And I can kind of smooth that out. Even the ends. I'll tie this on. I don't have to be too careful about how I do that. Come back here to the beginning. Now, as I wrap it, I kind of flatten it. I think you can see that, how I flatten it out so that the fibers are all straight. Push it around, making it nice, shiny, and smooth. And there's my body. It doesn't take much poly to do a pot even on a size 8. Now I'll trim that off. Kind of tie that stub end down. Come back here a bit because I want to tie off my copper about there, maybe one back, right about there. That's big enough because that's going to be about a third. So I want a third for the abdomen, third for the thorax, and then that's for the hackle and the wing. So I'll counter wrap this. And I don't worry too much on this fly about getting a whole bunch of wraps. Really, 3 is about all I'm going to get. So I'm going to tie this off. And there again, I use back part of my scissors. And that's our abdomen.
Or use Al's scissors.
That's a good idea.
She's using them right now, and I'm just saying, oh God, there she goes.
Actually, I'm tying at Al's station, so this is all his stuff. So I don't have to worry too much about taking care
Thanks
of it.
for noticing that, Mike. I was just sitting here cringing.
Al, have you got another camera set up facing Gretchen? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I've been working back and forth between them there. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and I wore black so that my line would show up good. Okay, now I need to do some peacock. And there's a lot of ways you can do peacock. My favorite way, however, is one single strand. And I know a lot of people do double strands, and I kind of enjoy the way it looks if I do a single strand. That's the way I always did Royal Wolves when we were tying commercially. So I'm going to just tie a single strand. And as you notice, I've got the rib part of it kind of up. And that's so that it will face forward. And then I can just put each wrap following the previous one tight. And I kind of bring my thumb back around to make sure that this is tight against the previous one. I probably should tie that stem down a little bit there. There we go. Just snap that puppy off. The next thing, of course, now is our calf tail. And here's our good old calf tail. So I'll just get a nice big clump of this because a lot of that's going to go away, and I'm going to go off camera to cut that off. I want you to notice that there's a whole bunch of layers
Down just a little bit.
of
There
this.
you go.
See all those different layers? Well, it's this stuff right down here that's going to get you in trouble if you try to keep it. So when you clean your calf tail, you want about the first 2 layers. So take a hold of it down about like that, and then run your fingers through it and get rid of all that stuff. And I'll go over and do this over the waist bin.
Thank you. I don't have to clean the camera then after she gets done.
Okay. Now you can see how different that is. Got rid of all that stuff and I've just got those last few layers. There's a couple there I probably don't want. Okay. We'll stack this. And hopefully I've got enough. It takes a lot of calf hair for a size 8. And frankly, we normally tie this in about a 14, so that's significantly different. And I've got some long ones. Get rid of them. I want the tail to go about halfway of or the wing to go about halfway on the tail, about like that. So I just hold it there to measure it. Now, as I tie over this, notice that it compacts pretty good. I'm going to trim it, kind of at an angle, because now I'm thinking about my hackle. I want to make it possible to get the hackle on there. I missed a couple of them. So I'm making a platform now for my hackle. Now, see, that's not too bad of a platform. If you remember the fly I showed you, how tight the wing was against the body. If you want the profile of the wing higher, what we do is you take a wrap here, we call it the pull point. Bring this around under the wing, and then just give it a little tug, and you can set that wing at a higher angle. So let's compare and see the difference.
Raise it up just a little bit. There you go.
It makes quite a bit of difference. So you have a choice which way you want it.
We're not saying either one is right or wrong. We're just saying you've got a choice.
There's a wild one. There we go. Well, he had a brother that came right after him. Okay, now we got to do some hackle. There's a whole
No,
bunch.
that's not it. Your hackle's over there.
Oh, I almost took Al's hackle for next week. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. So the way I'm going to do it on this one is the simplest way. I am just going to leave my thread hanging right here. And what that does is give me a buffer as I start my hackle forward. This gives it a little resistance that keeps it from sliding down this platform. However, that's not too bad a platform. When I'm tying a whole bunch of flies, I like to have my hackle pre-sized. And so I pre-size it and we put it in a plano that's got dividers in it. But I do that really fast and sometimes it can vary. So I always come back here and check to make sure I'm happy with that. Oh, that'll work. So I double check my hackle. I watch TV when I size hackle, so you know I can be a little off sometimes. But it saves a lot of time. I still got some pretty heavy stem there. Okay. Notice that I'm leaving a space of some bare stem there. You know, that is still pretty heavy stem. I'm going to go back a little further. I don't like the looks of that. There, that's better. I'm going to leave some bare stem when I tie it on, just holding it at an angle. Just take a wrap over it. Take a few wraps, then I usually pull it down, clip it off, cover it over. I'm going to come back up here. Now, normally, if I didn't have this slant, I would just leave my thread hanging right there. But because I've got this slant, I'm going to come right back here. And I'm going to be sure that I get back. In fact, I might take a wrap. Sometimes I take a wrap and take one behind just to make sure I've got it where I want it. And now we're just going to wrap forward. That looks pretty good. Take 2 wraps over it, pull it back. I'm going to push the end of that, the butt end of that back into itself. So it's going back like that. Pull it forward, trim it off. Now I'm going to do a whip finish, and a good whip finish starting back and going forward. Anybody have any questions at this point? Or was I just so thorough that you could possibly think of a question to ask?
Gretchen, on your hackle size, you're looking for the hackle to be between the hook shank and the hook gap. Is that right?
No, I want it to go about half of a gap below the point.
Yeah, gap and a half.
Half,
Yeah,
a
so it
half
could be a
below?
gap and a half.
A half
Pardon?
below? You say a half below the point?
Yeah, so it'd be a
Right.
gap and a half in length.
Okay, okay.
That might be a little short. That's pretty good, actually. Let's see.
Pretty close.
Pretty
Pretty
close.
On
So
the
that-
on the tilt of the wing, have you noticed any difference fishing that fly with the wing being more down or more up?
No,
It's just a choice.
just a choice. Yeah, you might be able, yeah, I don't think the fish it doesn't make any difference to the fish, but it might make a difference to you in terms of how you see it. If it's kind of windy, you might want the profile a little lower, but I've fished it a lot both ways. And to be quite honest with you, we sell it like this, but when Al and I are fishing it, we do the next version with the poly more
Yeah,
often.
And the wing just sets a little different anyway after you use the poly version. We like the
Now-
poly version because it doesn't get waterlogged and sink. The poly never gets wet.
I like fishing this. Well, for example, on the Lochsaw, where you've got big rocks with these deep pools, and most often there's no rising fish. But down in that pool, there's a cutthroat. He's got to be down there. And so I like to use an attractor type pattern like this or a stimulator. So that I fish that a lot on the Lochsaw, some on the Yellowstone, a little bit on the Madison. On the Madison, mostly I used more like a crayfish pattern, but it depended on the day. Used it on the Gallatin. On the Gallatin, when we lived in Bozeman, we would go after dinner to the golf course, but we didn't golf. We fished.
It was the best fishing on the whole darn stretch of river because who goes fishing at the golf course? Nobody, so.
It's actually kind of across the road. The smaller, one of the feeder channels go right through the golf course. So we did fish that one time for little grayling, and that was kind of fun. But
Did you wear a helmet?
no, foolish, huh?
Now, this is kind of an attractor, but do you find that it's pretty useful when there's stoneflies around? I mean, is it intended to kind of be an attractor in waters where stoneflies live, or is it just generally an attractor?
Generally an attractor. I don't know that I really have ever fished it for stoneflies. I mean, it would be in a different color if I did, probably
Yeah.
anyway.
And I'd be thinking things like We'd probably change it to an orange color for some of the earlier season stones.
Or
the
for grasshoppers.
Smaller yellow sallies in the there's just other patterns we'd fish for the stoneflies.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
you
guess
know,
I've always just kind of wondered, what would be the differences between fishing a, like, say, a Royal Wolf and a Trude style, as far as, you know, the advantages of a Trude style versus a Wolf style,
the
or,
divided wing.
yeah,
I can't answer that. All I can tell you is that I usually started my clients with a two fly rig. The one in the front of the boat would either be a Royal Wolf or a Humpy with a bead headed something or another on a dropper. And I'd do a Trude fly in the back of some type. Sometimes it was a Royal Trude, sometimes a Lime Trude.
right.
You just never knew what was going to work. And after the first half hour, if nothing happened, you do some switching.
And of course, it would not be a size 8. I mean, you if you were doing for hoppers or stoneflies, yeah, size 8. But normally we would fish this in about a
12 would be a big one.
12 would be a big one. Yeah, yeah. Which
Well, it's a-
always makes me chuckle because when my dad tied, a 12 was about as small as he ever tied.
Right.
He tied 8s, 10s, and 12s, and now we tie 12s, 14s, and 16s.
Sure. Or smaller.
Or smaller, yeah. And
Well,
we
it's a
fuss around
beautiful
about-
fly and you made it look easy.
This next one's gonna be easier. So let's.
Okay.
Well, is it easier?
It's different.
Yeah.
It's easier. You don't have to mess with the hair, but you have to manipulate the materials a little different than you do with hair.
Hair to me is easy, but it's because we've tied it so much. So I guess it's easier because you don't have to fuss with hair if you're not used to calf tail. Poly is easier to deal with. The problem with poly is it doesn't compact like that calf tail did. So I'm going to show you what to do to compensate for that.
You go into the materials, or you
Well, no, I've already done the materials. We're just going to tie this
want me to
fly.
put the hook in the vise for you?
Yeah, please do. His vise, I can't work very good, so he has to put the hook in for me. I've never figured this sucker out. I don't know. I like my vise. You've got 3 material holders on there.
I just had some extras, and I thought that's a good place to store them.
No wonder I don't have any material holders.
Well, I don't know what to tell you, dear. I guess you lost them.
Okay,
You ready to?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, you're on the vise.
So the same thing, we're going to start at about the 1/3 point.
No growls.
Hello.
What was that? Okay.
I-
Nothing, I guess.
I guess it was just a.
Okay, 1/3 point for our base wrap. Something about the base wrap, you all probably know this, but if you hold your thread perpendicular to the shank, you're going to have trouble with the hook
The point.
If you make your thread at an angle when you're going, you can just miss that, and it's so much easier and faster. So I'm going to do the same thing and stop a little ways back from that 1/3 point. The dog is fussing. I think she wants attention. Okay, I'm going to get some mousse. And we've been through this drill, so I'll just go ahead and clean it out over here with a bin. You know, I really like moose to tie with, but I don't like to meet moose in the river when I'm drifting. I don't know if you've all had that experience, but you never know. Moose are kind of cranky animals. Best to stay away from them. I had some close encounters with moose growing up in Wyoming. Okay. Oops. It's all cleaned out now, sort of. And let's look and see if it's about the right. We got about the right amount. Load my stacker.
So I wonder why you use Al's scissors, but you don't use his shotgun shell hair stacker.
She hates those, and thank God for that.
I prefer my stacker. I did use those a lot when we were tying commercially though.
Yeah,
But since then, we started selling this one and I really like it. It's got a little more space. If you can see this is bigger. I don't know.
it's pretty substantial compared to a shotgun shell.
Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting for Al to start selling the shotgun shell.
That's
yeah.
not going to happen. They're too much of a pain in the neck to build.
That's another reason. He's got 24 of those. He doesn't have just one. He has 24, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
And he probably doesn't share them. Is that correct?
you're right.
I've got one like yours, Gretchen, and look at what I got on the bottom of it. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh
I
yeah.
put a piece of cork on the bottom.
Ah, yes.
You know, I had one that had some felt on the bottom. And I don't know what happened to that one. Somehow, you know, things, it's probably in my travel case. I don't know. You know,
That just makes it a little softer to bang on.
yeah. I like the attention, I guess, maybe, huh? Okay, I've been through all this stuff on the tail, so I'm not going to talk about it again. But you will find mooses a lot easier to tie tail material with than elk or deer.
Let's stop right there, Gretch, for a sec. I want you to notice that how that trimmed off hair lands right on that 1/3 point. And the reason that it does is because she gave herself that little bit of leeway there to keep from the material creeping forward.
Boy, now Al's going to tie humpies next time, and it really is critical when you tie a humpy.
Yeah,
It's,
definitely.
really critical. Let's see, I guess I need some copper wire. One of the things I would do if I were tying commercially is I would just tie that on there. I would get my body material and I would tie this all on in one fell swoop, because that saves you time. So I thought I would just throw that in for fun.
Notice that she positioned the rib material on the bottom of the hook while attaching the material to the top of the hook. That probably comes from a little bit of practice.
Okay, let's get our body on here. Abdomen to be more correct. Tie that off. One of the things that I do, and I just noticed this today, and we don't talk about it, but you know, that thread's hanging down there, the material's right there, and I'm going to cut. It'd be really easy to have a bad problem. So I just kind of automatically put my finger there and push the thread back, and I don't even realize I do it. But that's something to think about, is kind of using that finger that's not doing anything to push the thread out of the way. Now we're going to counter wrap this. There's something about the copper on the lime. I just really like the looks of that. I don't know if it's buggy, but I like it.
Gretchen, how far back? I noticed you wrapped your body way forward, and then you brought your thread back over the body. How far back do you bring your thread? About to the halfway point on the hook?
1/3. I want
1/3?
1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Gotcha.
And the reason I do that is I like to have a little bulk here for my peacock.
Peacock, okay.
I could have stopped there, but then I would have to look for peacock that's fluffier, maybe. I just like to have a little substance under the, that was a good question, because didn't even talk about that. So I'll get my peacock. I did the one peacock. Let me do the peacock a little different this time, just for fun. I tie this, I was talking to Al earlier today. I tie this in a lot of different ways, kind of depending on my mood of the moment, except when I'm tying for somebody specific, but when I'm just tying for myself. So now I'm going to tie this on, 2 of them on by the tips. That looks pretty good, huh?
Mhm.
It's not my favorite look, but it looks good anyway. I mean, the fish don't really care. I kind of get crazy about some stuff I do. Okay, now we need to get did I comb some of that out?
It's in the bundle bowl here.
Oh, here it is.
Okay.
There it is. Now this is the way the poly looks when it comes off the skein.
Kind of snarled together.
And this is what it looks like after I comb it out. And this is a full chunk. So what I want to do is I'm going to well, let me think about this a minute.
You actually use a comb to comb it out with?
Yeah, like a mustache comb. Get that thing that I use. This is something I just found. This is in the women go to the cosmetic aisle to buy cosmetics. I go to the cosmetic aisle to buy fly tying tools.
Yeah.
This is, I found this in recently.
Oh,
There's the name of it.
hackle brush too.
Yeah. And then a
I'll be
teaser
darned.
for, yeah, it's a
So
multi-tool.
it's a multi-tool for fly tires made for
Oh,
ladies.
yeah. Let me see that name again.
What's that letter under there?
That's
That's
some,
a UE. There we go.
Jamanesque, it looks like.
Yeah, Japanese.
Japanesque. Okay, thank you. That's a cool tool.
The dubbing brush and a hair comb and,
Yeah.
and a dubbing picker.
right, nice.
There you go.
Right.
I was so excited when I found that.
Yeah.
Called the economy of force. That's a military principle.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. What you want to do with this wing is, because poly doesn't compact like calf tail, you have to kind of think of a way to make as easy a hill or as we can anyway. So
To
what I'm going to
prevent
do
the
first,
bump.
I'm going to tie half of what I want on first. Right up there. And I'm going to take my thread right back to there. Okay. That's the first part. Now I'm going to come back here and cut this off. I'm cutting it off long. And then this is my second part of the wing. I think I'm going to take a little bit of that out. That's going to be a pretty heavy wing if I don't. And I'm going to bring it back halfway back. Can you see that? So I'm not out here where I tied the first bundle on. I'm coming clear back here, and that's where I'm going to tie this on. So that gives me a more gradual slope. And I want this at the halfway point. And with poly, when you're getting ready to cut it, you don't want to pull it real tight and then measure it, because it'll spring back and then it'll be too short. So gently hold it, and I'm going to cut it. I could cut that off a little more, I think. There we go. That's better. And there's my wing. Now I'm going to try something kind of tricky here. Let's see. Here's a nice long. Well, that's got a. Does that have a wowzer in it? I know I'm talking to myself. Oh, that looks a little short. Okay, I'm selecting hackle here. I think maybe this one of these is what I'm going to use. There we go. Get rid of the bad stuff. Tie it on, leaving a little bare space. It's a pretty heavy stem on this. This was cape, and I think it has kind of a heavy stem. I'm trying to convince Al that we need to buy some more hackle, but he's not buying it. Okay, what I'm going to do is take some loose turns like this. Down to here. Now I'm going to go back loose. Now I'm going to come back forward, work my way through there. And that's a good way of dealing with the slope. There. Any questions? Took 2 wraps over it. I'm going to pull it back.
I've never seen that
button.
done before. That answers that solves a lot of problems I've had in the past.
Yeah, that just and you'd think that it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it seems like you're going to mess up the hackle, but if you just leave those spaces between the turns, then you can come back and fill them in, going back and then back forward again. And
Yeah,
I
it
think
gives you
that
gives you a nice tight hackle pattern too.
yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like the way that looks. I mean, this isn't a tractor, so you want it. I like my tractors pretty heavily hackled. So you could afford to do that. I need a whip finish tool. Thank you, dear. So there we go. And that's our, and I didn't pull that wing up. I could have, but I didn't on this one. So it's kind of laying down flat. I probably should have. It's pretty heavy, but I was too excited to do my hackle. I guess I'll leave that in there. So any questions?
Again, beautiful fly, and it looks bulletproof.
Yeah, the really cool thing about the poly yarn, and I've said it dozens of times before, the stuff never gets waterlogged. And I can't tell you the number of times I had flies sinking with clients, because if an inexperienced client gets in your boat, I guarantee you they're going to find some way to sink the fly.
Yeah, and
Yeah, our
poly,
inexperienced student will do the same thing, Al.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
the poly is so inexpensive too. Sometimes it's not easy to find good calf tail. I mean, we've been really lucky in that we've been able to go to a trade show and high grade calf tail, and so we've got really good calf tail. but sometimes it's not real easy to find calf tail. On smaller flies, you can use calf body hair. And it's a little easier, it's straighter, it's easier to deal with, don't you think?
It is. On the other side of the coin, you want to be aware that calf body hair does not float as good as calf tail hair.
It's not as, it's denser.
It's a little bit denser, and so it doesn't have the same flotation.
Let me tell you a little story that Amy Milne told us one night. She was saying she was teaching using calf tail, and somebody thought she was saying cat tail. Yeah. So she stopped using that term and went back to the old kip tail.
Good one. Good one. Yes. I can see where that would happen really easy.
Well, it's bad enough that we use calf tail, I suppose, if you're sort of squeamish about that, but I do like the first time I tried to deal with calf tail, I have to tell you, it was an absolute car wreck. It was at a show and I was taking a class and Bob Lay was teaching the class, and
Oh, yeah.
that was when you were president, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I just could not figure out what I was doing wrong. Well, what I was doing wrong was I was trying to keep too much of it.
Yeah. If you're not throwing half of it away, of course, as long as you're throwing away the right half, you're going to be doing fine. If you're tying with 2/3 of the bundle or more, you're going to have trouble.
Yeah, I remember when I first started tying flies as a young captain, I was raising, just starting my family, and I didn't have a whole lot of money. So all the materials was kind of hard to throw away half of it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
No, exactly.
But for most of us out here now in the civilian world, I find it very, very interesting that they won't throw away 1/3 of a penny's worth of hair, and they'll buy $1,000 fly rod.
Yeah.
Just doesn't equate. So
No,
But
it
a
does.
skein of that poly yarn is what, a couple bucks?
you can get them on eBay for $3 and it's 72 yards, and it's enough for you and your whole club for your lifetime.
So, and we use the orange for stonefly patterns,
Strike indicators.
strike indicators. We use the,
Hot spots, that'd be good for,
and we use the gray or the brown for a poly humpy like Al's gonna do.
Yeah.
We use all the colors.
I've never used poly yarn, but I think I'm going to have to give it a try.
Well,
Yes.
what you do is you go to eBay and you don't type polyyarn in because you're going to get the wrong stuff. You want to type Fentex, and Fentex is spelled PHENTEX. Craft and slipper yarn. That's very important. Craft and slipper yarn.
Go to the,
Oh no, go to that one. Okay, she's holding it up there. It is Fentex. That's the way it's spelled. PHENTEX. But this is called, it's important, it's craft and slipper yarn because of several years ago, put that back over the camera there. Anyway, several years ago, the company quit manufacturing the 3-ply yarn and they went to a single ply for craft and slipper yarn, and they discontinued the 3-ply, which is what the original was. So if you go looking for that, you won't find it. But if you go looking for craft and slipper yarn, you'll get it.
That's cool. Well, I know where my next stop is tonight.
Oh, good. eBay seems to be better than Amazon, but I'm not trying to head you away from Amazon because we buy from a dang near every day. But anyway.
Yeah, I like
just-
eBay. I buy a lot of stuff off eBay and Amazon and
Yeah.
Walmart, Kmart, and every place else where I can find what I need.
I just recently bought some from Jay Stockard, I think it was.
Yeah.
Hairline polypropylene yarn in light gray. I didn't pay very much of it. It's a small card. But it's a small ply. I don't think it's like as full as what you were dealing with there.
Well, that's why I brought that to your attention. You'll notice that the package she had there, it said 3 something or another on it. That means it's 3 strand, and that's the old style. The craft and slipper yarn is the identical product, but it's a single strand. So you'll probably find that You may have to double up more often. That's fine. It combs two strands comb together just fine on a big
Right.
fly. But the single strand seems to work pretty well for, I'm sorry, go ahead, dear.
Well, he said a card.
Yeah,
Now, when you have polyarn on a card,
it gets kinked.
you're gonna have a kink in it, right?
Right.
Goes around the edge. You know how to get rid of that kink?
Heat gun.
That's right. We
From
got one
Fleet
here. A
Farm.
heat gun or a hair dryer works good.
Yeah. Yep.
In fact, why don't you grab that white? And let's see if we can do a heat gun experiment right now.
Well, this doesn't have a
It doesn't have any kinks in it.
because I don't put it on a card.
Have you tried McFly foam for that? What's the difference in McFly foam?
Oh,
Uh,
McFly foam is totally different.
It
Yeah, it's a
is. It kind of looks like poly though.
Yeah, I've never used it. So I can't tell you. We've always had poly, and I mean, when you buy a 72-yard skein of poly, even if you're a commercial tire, it takes forever to go through it.
We use McFly foam for that fly that Patty tied in at Key Largo,
Yeah,
and it's fuzzier and like more like Duffy stuff. It has a different texture.
I think it's finer, maybe a finer thread. I have a package. I've never used it yet, but I bought it mainly
Well,
for the
we're-
yellow.
we're
for
expecting a
hopper,
report.
right?
We'll try.
For hopper bodies, to use the yellow for. I do a furled hopper body, like I twist the end of it, so it'll give an extended body of just like a half an inch at the most, a quarter to a half an inch.
So try it for a wing and let us know how it works.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would work for like parachute wings and,
Yeah.
Probably
I could try it on a tree.
Test it in a cup of water and see if it gets waterlogged or if it repels the water. I mean, it's the first thing you want to find out.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to try it sometime. I bought it thinking I needed it and I haven't used it yet, but
Yeah,
I think I have a
we've
little
got
bit of yellow poly yarn left, so.
we have a
Yep.
whole room full of that kind of stuff. Well, just to show you. We have a
Oh,
whole room
right.
full of that kind of stuff. So, and
Right.
that's just one wall of 4 that look the same. So. The Joyce says that the brush that Gretchen uses is on Amazon as, let me get into the,
Eyebrow shaper.
oh, there it is. As an eyebrow shaper, just ordered one. Okay, good. Well, now you know where to go, guys. Amazon.
There we go.
So you don't have to go to the women's cosmetic aisle. We'll save you that.
You take your wife along for protection, that's all.
Yeah.
Aaron Cully just asked the question on dyeing the poly yarn. I don't know how in the devil they get that stuff dyed, but it doesn't accept dye in the kitchen worth a darn.
Usually if if it floats real well, it doesn't accept dye very well.
Yeah, that's probably true. So I would suspect they have some kind of a pressurized system of dyeing it, or maybe they dye it before they do whatever they do to it to make it a strand. I'm at a loss, but anyway, we tried dyeing it dozens of times, and it'll sort of take on a color, and it'll all come off on your hands or in the water the first time.
Remember that stuff we were trying to do with Gary LaFontaine?
Oh, Jesus.
It was a packaging material and we wanted to dye it red. And we needed some in red. And I said, well, let me take it upstairs and I'll try to dye it, Gary. So I went upstairs and dyed this stuff. And it came, when it came out, it looked like,
I used to work as a butcher in
Oh,
a kill plant. So, I mean, I know what lungs look like that just came out of an animal freshly killed.
oh,
And this exactly looked like that.
awful.
It was terrible. I tell you.
Would make a good Halloween thing of
Oh, I don't even,
oh.
wouldn't even want to do that and make people sick to look at
So
it.
we've tried to dye a lot of stuff and
Yeah.
some works and some
That's the
doesn't.
stuff he originally used for the sparkle pupa, right?
Yeah.
That's the stuff. And
Yeah.
what you have to do is you color it and then you cover it over with a flexible water resistant material. You know, some of this flexible UV stuff would probably work pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of what I've
Yeah.
seen is you use a different color underbody to
Yeah.
let that bubble be represented as a different color. So use a
Yeah.
bright
Aaron-
green or a brown or whatever to make the bubble. a
Aaron
different color.
Cully asked, "Now, how does it compare to Widow's Web?" I'm not familiar with Widow's Web. I don't
I
know.
think Widow's Web is finer. Isn't it?
Yeah. Let me remove the spotlight here.
We had some Widow's Web when we had that Montana stuff, but we got rid of all of it, so. Because we never used it. We had a good time with Gary when we were working on the videos, because we kept trying all this different stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Al,
Yeah.
how come Gretchen knows about Widow's Web and you don't?
There's a whole lot of things that I don't know that she
Be
that she has
careful.
to teach me. Yeah. And I'll be real careful at this point not to go any, Jim, you're good point. I'll just shut up.
Well, here's the thing, I'm kind of more into materials than Al is.
Yeah.
Al is kind of more traditional.
Yeah, to a more or lesser degree. Then the other side of the coin is I have to admit, since she got involved with Women Connect and she's been traveling around the country teaching clinics while I stayed at home and did a Zoom so we could do a hybrid presentation. She's run across a lot of materials that I don't run across here in my Zoom room here in Idaho.
Does that mean women are more creative?
That's good. No way am I going to comment one way or the other.
Oh, Mike is,
Mike is nodding his head. His wife is standing just off camera there with a club.
No, she's not, but I found that out today. We've been picking out storm doors and things like that. We're getting new siding and windows, so she's the creative one.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, me too. My wife is the creative one, the artsy one. You know, I'm a computer guy. If it's black and white, I can handle it. If it's not a 1 or a 0, I'm lost.
but you know, when it comes to writing, Al is the one that has the imagination.
Oh yeah, I can make up a good story right on the drop of a hat. Most of it's even true.
He's
Because you watch those murder mysteries.
Yeah,
Hey, I love those.
so I have him come up with the ideas. He writes the original stuff and then we kind of work at the rest of it together.
Jim Ferguson is doing something there in the background. I'm going to spotlight you, Jim, if you don't mind. And I'd like to find out what in the heck are you doing?
Okay.
Okay, let's see. You are now spotlighted.
Okay. What it is I got a whole bunch of these rolls of basically it's macrame yarn, you know,
Yeah, right.
and it's woven. And then I found out that if I have lots of time, I can take a dubbing needle or a needle like that, and I can unravel it. And you end up with something like that.
It
Do you know
look-
if it's poly or what?
Yeah, it's a poly yarn, but it's a little wavy. But then what I did was take your heat gun type of thing, you know, and under tension, hold it and go through it, and it really straightens it out.
Ah,
And then what
Is that
I've
Bonnie
done-
cord, Jim?
Pardon?
Is that Bonnie cord?
Well, it's
It's macrame cord.
macrame cord.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And,
okay.
And then what I did too finally is, okay, well, what do you do to store it? Well, one of those guys, remember, came up with the idea of having those straws.
Yep.
Okay, and if I take this stuff and I take a zip cord, take a little bit like that, you know, when it's longer, and wrap it around there and zip tie it, it'll fit right in there, and you end up with something like this. This is a commercial one though, but you end up with, you know, on the end of the, like that. But you can
How
make your own.
interesting.
So that's kind of what I've been doing with this stuff because I hate like heck to throw away all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
you got enough of that macrame cord. You could share it with everybody on our mailing list and still have a bunch left over.
yeah, I got one in yellow too.
Oh, boy.
Holy Jesus. You're going to tie a few hoppers, huh, Pat, Jim?
Yeah, well, that's what I got, and it's good tying material, but it's I got it free, so that's why it's cheap.
Okay, Jim, before I unspotlight you, what is that fly that's in the vise?
Okay, that is the let's see, Orleans barber. It is a tractor pattern for sea run cuts and also it's used on the Klamath River and on the Rogue River in it's for the half pounders. And it was in one of the flight tying magazines and Shuey wrote an article on it. And the difference is that it's got a collar of speckled guinea.
Yeah, I see that.
That was what McNeese added to it to make it a little different. And
So it
what
looks,
I did
is
is
that
I used chenille in here, but I used a hot pink chenille.
yeah.
And you're supposed to use a bright red. I do have, this is what it looks like using the larger size and a bright red chenille.
Mm-hmm.
Is that tail Amherst?
Now that tail is wood duck, barred
Oh, wood duck.
So it's a historical pattern. Let's see, Polly Roseborough, he went down to the Klamath area and into that town to decide who came up with this pattern and researched it. And I don't know if the original guy was a barber or if his last name was Barber. I have to really reread that article. But the town in Northern California is Orleans. And that's where the Orleans came from.
Oh, got it. Well, we're going to unspotlight this and kind of wind this whole thing up now. Unless you've got other questions out there.
Mike is up.
Back to Mike. Mike, we'll give you the spotlight.
Nope, I just really like to thank you guys for all the support you have given us over the at least a year. And appreciate you tying for us tonight and for the next meeting in 2 weeks. Same time, same place, same Zoom place. Really appreciate all the support and it was a great presentation tonight.
Our thanks to all of you. And if there's no other questions, we'll say good night.
Good night.
Take care. Paul, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Paul.
Yeah, good morning, Paul.
Almost afternoon.
Oh, well, good afternoon then. All right. Anyway,
you.
take care, guys.